Okay, so when we think about the structure of government, how our government would be organized, James Madison is the main architect. And he defends the architecture in the Federalist Papers. So I want us to understand when I say Madisonian system, I'm talking about our governmental structure according to Madison and defended by Madison. So one of the most important features is that there would be a separation of powers, and he did not come up with that on his own. It's an Enlightenment idea from Montesquieu, but I have here drawn for you separation of powers to think about how power would be shared and divided horizontally. I don't have the three branches on this line because it's hard to pick in what order to put them and who would be at the center. So if you can imagine that power is separated. And what power do they share? They share the power of creating a government which governs. Congress has the legislative powers of making laws. The president has the executive powers of enforcing the laws with other people. He's not a one-man show, but he's at the top of it. And then the judicial branch has the power of judicial review and essentially can be the referee on the other branches as well as other parts of the government. So these three branches have different things that they do. Now their powers overlap. So if you can imagine the three branches on this line, they're mostly separate. But what really keeps them separate is the fact that they do overlap, that there are places in which one can check the other. And that happens for all of them. So go back to your checks and balances chart that you copied, and we'll be, of course, adding more throughout the semester. So divide power that way. But we still have to address the concerns of federal government strength and state sovereignty. So add in another way to divide power even more, and you have federalism kind of going vertically. I don't put national or state on this chart because it's arguable which one would go at the top and which one would go at the bottom. But the idea is have multiple branches to divide out power that way, and then additionally divide out responsibilities to one government. So the federal government has certain responsibilities. Those are the exclusive powers. And the state governments have kind of just all the rest, guaranteed by the reserved powers from the 10th Amendment. And then there would be overlap. And Madison could have foreseen that and probably deliberately left the ambiguity there for us to work out in the best way for the times. So that ambiguity would also allow for flexibility to meet our needs. This Constitution, he would want it to be somewhat flexible, because if it were really rigid, what happens when you apply pressure to something rigid? It would snap. So this government is going to have a division of powers, and also it might, because of that division of powers, have some flexibility. That there might be adjustment allowed. So now in the quadrants around here, I'm going to put the benefits of structuring government in this way, horizontally and vertically spreading out power. The first is kind of obvious. That is that you have the power to prevent tyranny this way. No branch, no person, no party can become too powerful. So while today our Congress is controlled by the Republican Party, our president is a Democrat. While our Congress is controlled by the Republican Party, when you look at the governors and legislatures across the country, they vary party to party. So tyranny is prevented. There's not like one person that we could decide is the most powerful person of all. For example, most Americans quickly would say, oh, Barack Obama, he's the president, he's the most powerful. He might be the most popular, like the most widely known. But as far as powerful in your daily life, he is not the person you go to when you have a problem. It's arguable that your governor is much more powerful. If we think about the Affordable Care Act known as Obamacare, it's a piece of legislation passed by Congress, and that legislation would expand Medicaid, but some states declined that Medicaid. Texas being one of them. Your governor, former Governor Perry, declined that. So while you might think, oh, President Obama got this legislation passed, millions of Americans have gotten more health insurance, that's not necessarily the case for Texans. Texans have largely been kind of left out of that expansion of those covered because of decisions from your governor. Well, anyways, back to this. So we divide out power so that no one's too powerful, and the idea is then you have your freedom protected, that there won't be a tyrannical power imposing so much order or arbitrary laws on you as to infringe upon your basic liberties. So thinking about how that power is divided out, and there's numerous checks and balances to prevent the tyranny, that does also then lend itself to stability. You know, a law doesn't just happen. It has to go through 2 chambers of Congress. Then the president can stop it, and the Congress can override his veto. And then it might go into law, and a few months later, 5 years later, 10 years later, the Supreme Court says, hey, that's unconstitutional. So what we have here is stability, because we can't have a sweeping change across all branches and all levels of government. There are numerous checks in the way. So that stability makes sure that hopefully the legislation or the policy that's produced is solid and has been thought out and reflects the interests of Americans as a whole. The negative side to that stability is gridlock, that the checks and balances might be so effective that they keep the government from actually producing policy. So we have that stability, and on the flip side, the negative side, we have that gridlock. What I didn't talk about when I covered the 6 principles very much is the importance of protecting minority rights. Madison was very worried about a democracy that would allow for the tyranny of the mob to govern. That we want our government to represent the people, serve the people, but not allow for the peoples to violate the rights of minority groups. So this system does, in a sense, protect minority rights because the majority can never really rule easily. While one party can control one branch for a few years, that doesn't mean all at once the whole country has been taken over by that majority. So a big factor in preventing majority rule is the fact that we have federalism, that we have states that can respect states' values and needs and make laws accordingly. So mob rule is pretty hard to make happen equally across the country because of this intense division and complication of checks and balances. So all of this we've talked about here is we break up power. We dilute power across the whole system. And what that means for you is there's not one door to the all-powerful person in this country. You actually, because power is separated out in this faction, you actually have numerous points of access, numerous ways you could request a change or request assistance, numerous ways you have contact with the government. So that's our last one here, that you have many points of access. So you have the courts. You can go through the courts. You can sue somebody. You can sue your state. You could sue the federal government. And you rely on those courts to provide you that opportunity. You get to elect your governor. You get to elect your state senators and representatives, your U.S. congressmen. So these are all people that you can access. You have a say in who gets those offices. And then, of course, you also have local government that provides you a point of access. That one's complicated, and by the end of the semester, you should feel really comfortable. That one's a little bit more like to be revealed as we go. But I wanted to give you this ahead of time. So the whole course is really going to demonstrate all these benefits of the Madisonian structure, why we have this system and what makes it so effective for our government. Now, next, what you're doing is you're watching a video from the Annenberg classroom about Lilly Ledbetter. And what watching this video will do is it'll tell you about the first bill President Obama signed into law. It'll give you a glimpse into the wage gap and problems with making sure that there's equality in employment. But more importantly for here is it's going to demonstrate how Lilly Ledbetter had many points of access to the government. So she knocked on one door, and that door didn't really work out. She did not get what she needed there. But that was not the end-all be-all, because nobody is the end-all be-all in this system. No branch is the end-all be-all in this system. So she went and knocked on another door. And so as you're watching the video, just take some notes for your interest, but keep in mind why you're watching it.